What's going on, guys? Welcome back to WWE Network and Show, where I, Graham G.S. and Matthews, break down all the original content you watch on the WWE Network. And today we're talking the March 1st, 2021 edition of Raw Talk, although this time being hosted by R-Truth and Kayla Braxton, who filled in for Charlotte Caruso this week. Any one of you that listens here to the show every week with me reviewing Raw Talk probably knows I'm not a Charlotte Caruso fan at all. Kayla is not the most amazing host in the world, but she is actually pretty good. And it might be because she has more experience. Now, I know Charlie's on like ESPN and stuff like that, but like Kayla does the bump, she does talking smack. I know Charlie does Raw Talk, but I don't know, I just find Kayla to be far more likable than Charlie, at least in my opinion. So while this wasn't a great edition of Raw Talk, it was a pretty ho-hum edition of the show, any more special than usual. She did make it a bit more bearable than it normally is. So that was a highlight from this episode. So they quickly recap the end of Raw that saw Bobby Lashley win the WWE Championship from The Miz, which was an amazing moment. As a longtime Lashley fan myself, I thought that was super fucking cool. And even R-Truth said that he was very proud, despite his history with Lashley, and Lashley beating him up all the time on Raw and roughing him up here on Raw Talk. Truth was very proud to see Lashley as the WWE Champion at the end of Raw on Monday night. And they also quickly recapped Alexa Bliss taunting Randy Orton, and that whole furthering of that feud backstage, which I've enjoyed the feud overall, honestly. I know I'm in the minority when I say that. But what they did this week, it was actually kind of cool. The Orton coughing up the black goo or whatever it was, that was stupid. But anyway, it was what it was. So then they welcome on Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler as their first guest here on Raw Talk. And speaking of Shayna Baszler, quick plug, she will be on here, the channel, tomorrow. She's going to be on the channel here tomorrow, talking all things NXT, her WWE Women's Tag Team title reign, and so much more. An exclusive interview with the Queen of Spades herself, one half of the WWE Women's Tag Team Champions. That's coming up first thing tomorrow here on the channel. So again, if you haven't already subscribed, definitely do so. You're not going to want to miss that chat. So they preview, speaking of which, the WWE Women's Tag Team title match coming up on Wednesday on NXT against Dakota Kai and Raquel Gonzalez. Baszler brings up, and Kayla asks her, you've been in NXT before, you're a former champion there, are you worried about defending your title in NXT? And then Shayna says, why would I be worried? I was basically undefeated for 2 years. I was dominant in NXT, and I'm happy to remind the NXT audience of that by retaining my title on Wednesday night alongside Nia Jax. And Kayla said, you weren't really all that dominant on Raw this week, losing to Charlotte Flair in the matter of 3 minutes, which is true. And I'm glad Kayla brought that up and just didn't sheepishly say, oh yeah, no, you were dominant, blah, blah, blah. No, Shayna lost in 3 minutes on Raw. So that is that's an absolute fact. Their reign, they've been pretty dominant as tag team champions, as a tag team, but Shayna on her own, unfortunately, did lose to Charlotte on Raw this past week, which was very unfortunate, as I said. So anyway, they bring up how they're 40 days out from being the longest WWE Women's Tag Team Champions to date, which, not consecutively, they might be thinking of overall days as Women's Tag Team Champions, because I still think the longest reign is held by the Kabuki Warriors, Asuka and Kairi Sane, who held the belts from October of 2019 up until early April of 2020 at WrestleMania 36. So Shayna and Nia dropped the belts in December. They won them back in January. So it would seem to indicate that if they do hold the belts for another 40 days, they will break the record, but for total days as tag team champions and not one individual reign, if that makes sense. But anyway, they bring up Asuka, the Raw Women's Champion, the same woman who Shayna knocked her teeth out last week on Raw. And Kayla brings up, would either of you be able to, in your opinion, beat Asuka for that Raw Women's Championship? We saw Charlotte Flair throw her name out there. What about you guys? And Nia says, well, I don't know about you, Shayna, but I definitely know I could beat Asuka, which is funny because I think we've seen Asuka and Shayna before on Raw. They may have ended it with Asuka winning in a matter of minutes. I don't remember. But of all the times that we've seen Asuka versus Nia Jax, I'm talking NXT, I'm talking on the main roster, I'm talking recently. Like, they've had 3 different feuds since 2016. Like, literally every 2 or 3 years, they will rekindle this rivalry. They feuded in 2016, they feuded in 2018, and they feuded in 2019. or 2020, I'm sorry, they feuded last year. So they have feuded every 2 years, and I think Asuka has literally won every single one of those fucking matches. So I don't believe Nia when she says that she can beat Asuka. Maybe Shayna, definitely not Nia Jax. And then Shayna jokingly said, "Why do you guys keep asking me to be on Raw Talk? I hate being here." And that was the last thing that she said before they walked off, which was funny. So then they welcome on Elias and Jackson Riker, and R-Truth immediately asks for Elias's autograph. And that was when Kayla asked Elias about wanting to collaborate with Bad Bunny, and she found it funny, and he was wondering why she found it funny, because he feels that he's a legitimate artist. And that was when Truth butt in and said, well, you put my name in one of your titles for your songs. I appreciate that, because it's called The Universal Truth. That's the name of the album, so Truth thought the album was about him. But yeah, they talk about the whole Bad Bunny thing, and Elias lost to Damian Priest on Raw on Monday night. And they even bring up how Riker attempted to help Elias cheat, although he fell short and Elias lost anyway. But Riker feels like he has better things to achieve, which is why he's with Elias. I feel like we never really got a proper explanation for why they're together. He's kind of hinted at certain things and said it in small promos here on Raw Talk, maybe on Raw itself, but I feel like we don't really know, aside from the fact that WWE just wanted to give Elias a heavy, and therefore they just gave him Jackson Riker, because Jackson Riker, I guess, was too toxic with the rest of the Forgotten Sons, even though they fired the other one when he did absolutely nothing wrong last year. But at any rate, I guess Jackson Riker didn't either, but some of the things that he said on Twitter were a bit questionable at the time that he tweeted them, so that's a whole other conversation for a different day. Anyway, Elias says that his end goal in all of this is to change lives with more music of his. And that was really it. So then they welcome on Drew McIntyre as the final guest here on the show. And Kayla said this is the first time that I think she's interviewed him where he wasn't the WWE champion for the first time in close to a year. And he says, yeah, it's weird to not be called the WWE champion. I still haven't gotten used to that yet. But it doesn't matter who's WWE champion come WrestleMania, Miz, Lashley, whatever. I mean, obviously Lashley is the current champion. But he says he will be in the main event of WrestleMania for the second straight year. He will main event WrestleMania once again. And he feels like Lashley and McIntyre would be a very significant match for his career, for Lashley's career, for Monday Night Raw, for WrestleMania. And honestly, I agree. I think a triple threat with Brock would be great. I hate the fact that I'm even saying that just because I don't want Brock back in the title picture. I mean, I don't want to sound like a hypocrite, but it would give us Brock and Bobby finally, and then Lashley can win by pinning Drew. I think he could do that, right? Brock winning would be fucking dumb, or Drew getting the belt back. Lashley's got to be champion coming out of WrestleMania. I think McIntyre getting the belt back would be better than Brock being champion again, but it would still be stupid because I think Lashley deserves a nice long reign. I know Miz did too, but the timing was just terrible. Lashley is the hot hand right now. He should be champion for the foreseeable future. But he does tell Lashley a bit of advice for Lashley. He says, watch who your friends are, watch your buddies, because I know from working with Sheamus that Sheamus got very jealous of me being WWE champion, so just be careful of who you surround yourself with. And then R-Truth gives McIntyre some advice saying, hey, I lost what was precious to me as well, that being the 24/7 championship. Just take care of business and get that belt back. And I got to beat Bad Bunny for that 24/7 championship. I got to watch out for DP, though. He says DP again. It's a running gag here in the show where Truth calls Damian Priest DP. And it was a running gag with Charlie. I guess Drew was not familiar with that. Because when Truth said, I got to take care of DP, Damian Priest, you could tell Drew really wanted to burst out laughing in that moment. Like he held back laughter at that point, which was great. So he talked about the match with Sheamus, and it was a great match. I'm honestly really surprised they gave it away on Raw with no prior hype, and it was a clean finish. And it was a WrestleMania-worthy match they just gave away on Raw for no real reason. Unless they're just abandoning the feud, I don't know. But he talked about how great that match was, and he's been feeling homesick lately. But hey, Sheamus, the way that he fucking kicks you and just beats the shit out of you will make you feel like you're at home. And that was the first time in 12 years he said they had a proper match. Their first real match since their FCW days, I believe. He said 11 years, but Sheamus and Drew were on the main roster 11 years ago, so I assume he means 2009. That would be my guess. But anyway, he said that Sheamus actually left a mark on his shoulder from kicking him right in the shoulder with his boot. And he hopes that Sheamus knows that it didn't have to go down that way. And then Kayla wished him luck in pursuing his WWE Championship again, and that was it. So, again, a pretty ho-hum edition of Raw Talk. The Drew stuff was good. Shayna was funny at points. Just Shayna and Nia in the show are just not very good, and I just don't care for the tag team. That's probably the problem. I just don't give a fuck about Nia Jax, but Shayna's great. And, the Elias and Jackson Riker stuff was just a complete waste of time. Like, why were they even here on the show? Like, that felt like filler. It would have been cool to get some post-match comments from Bobby Lashley here in the show or someone from the Hurt Business, but what are you going to do? So nothing really to see here for the March 1st, 2021 edition of Raw Talk. Be sure to like this video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more daily content. Thank you guys again. I said this yesterday in my review of the Big E24, but thank you guys for your support here at the channel, helping me surpass 5,000 subscribers on Sunday. I really, really appreciate that. As we move forward here, again, more daily content, more exclusive interviews, including, as I said earlier, with one half of the WWE Women's Tag Team Champions. Thankfully not Nia Jax, but rather Shayna Baszler, first thing here tomorrow on the channel. I'm not sure if there's an exact time on that, but it should be up on the earlier side tomorrow here on the channel with the Queen of Spades herself. So again, subscribe. You're not going to want to miss that chat and all the other videos coming up here on the channel every single day moving forward. Have an awesome one, guys. I'm Graham G.S. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.